It's been a really long time since I've had a chance to spend a good amount of time in the kitchen getting together some of the homemade essentials that we really like to have to hand. After the school holidays, we actually had a death in the family, and it's been a really difficult past few weeks. We've been sad, we've been busy, we've been trying to juggle everything and look after our family who are all grieving. My priority just hasn't been to spend time in the kitchen. I've been making quick dinners. I've been doing things that are as easy as they can possibly be, trying to get everybody fed and full up, but I wanted to be available for our family as much as I possibly could. So in today's video, you're going to see me make several different things: some bread, some stock, some yogurt, some almond milk, some pate and some granola. But I also wanted to share some thoughts with you about walking through these difficult times and just letting yourself take the pressure off a little bit and giving yourself some grace. But first, I wanted to tell you about this bread that I'm making. So this is sourdough multigrain bread, and I have the recipe for that over on the blog. I'll link it in the description box below. It's my absolute favourite sourdough recipe. I love the sesame flavour that comes through, and you'll see me putting in those seeds later on. It's a very easy recipe. I just put everything in the bowl except for the seeds and mix it up, and then I do the normal stretch and fold, coil fold, and I put the inclusions in right at the beginning so that they have time to really be worked through the whole dough. For me, making bread is a really relaxing process. I love making it, and I love making it for friends and family that are really going to enjoy it. So I've been frustrated over the past few weeks that I haven't been able to make it as much as I normally would. So I'm really happy to be back to bread making today. The other thing that I haven't had time to make is yogurt, which is a shame because that's one of our family favourites for breakfast in the morning. I normally make my yogurt with full fat milk, but today I only had semi-skimmed pasteurised milk, so I'm going to be heating it up to 42 degrees Celsius before I add the starter. I don't need to let it cool down, so it's a bit of a faster process than if you're using raw milk. It actually turned out really well. I was quite worried about the texture that I would end up with, but it was absolutely fine. And the other thing that I'm getting on right now is some stock. And I'm just using up all of the bones that I've got in the freezer from meals over the past few months. I just save all of the bones, and you can tell that I've not made stock for a while because I had a lot in the freezer. I'm also going to be adding a pork trotter, which is just going to ensure that I get a really good gel to my stock, which is where all of the good nutrition is. I will be able to get some of the meat off that trotter as well, which I can use in a soup later in the week. I have to say this is not my favourite, using up things like pigs' heads and trotters and things like that. I don't really enjoy it, but I do feel some sense of accomplishment in being able to use the whole of the pig and not just the nice cuts. And of course, there's a lot of nutrition in those less desirable cuts. I'm adding filtered water, then I'm going to be adding the aromats, so onion, garlic, peppercorns, cloves, some vinegar to help it gel, and some bay leaves. And this will come up to pressure in my pressure cooker on the stove, and then I'll turn it right down and it'll cook for about 4 hours. I think it's really easy as a mom to feel guilty when we don't have the time or the bandwidth to make things from scratch or to do what we would normally be doing for our family. But I think it's so important to be able to take a step back, not feel guilty about it, and to be able to prioritise what is really important in that moment. So whether that might be your job, at some point you might need to think, I need to concentrate on my job right now. I'm going to be spending less time in the kitchen. or it might be, as in my case, a family emergency that just needed all of my attention for a few weeks. Whatever the reason, I think it's absolutely okay for us as moms to say, I'm going to be changing the way I do things right now. I can't carry on doing everything that I normally would do, and I'm just going to take a step back and breathe and know that the time will come again when I can get back to doing all of those things that I enjoy for my family. This can be even more difficult, I think, if you've got children or people in your family that have got food allergies, because you know how important it is for them to eat the right things. And as in my case, you can't just pop to the shop and buy something for them. My children rely on me to make absolutely everything that they're going to eat. So it is quite difficult sometimes to take a step back and to not feel guilty that I haven't had time to make such and such a thing. But it's absolutely fine for them for a week or so to have banana and peanut butter as their snack every day. They really enjoy it too, so they're not complaining. This almond milk that I'm making right now, they love having that for breakfast, but I just haven't been able to get up in time to make it for them to have their smoothies in the morning. So I'm making it today, and I know that they're going to be really happy tomorrow morning to have their smoothies. But I'm not feeling guilty about not being able to do it for the past few weeks. So just to explain how I'm making this almond milk, I've soaked the almonds overnight, and then I'm measuring the soaked almonds. So there were about 2.5 cups of soaked almonds, and then you put twice the amount of water, so 5 cups of filtered water. You mix it in the blender, and then you sieve it through a cheesecloth to make sure that none of the bits of almond get into the milk, and this will give you a beautiful texture to your almond milk. I've tried making almond milk in the past and my boys hated it, but doing it this way turns out really well, and they really enjoy it in a banana smoothie in the morning for breakfast. It feels really good to me now to be getting back to normal, back in the kitchen, back making things that I enjoy. And that's the key to it. I do actually really enjoy spending time in the kitchen and making all of these different things. I know for some people being in the kitchen is a chore, but what I found is by learning new skills like making sourdough or making almond milk or yogurt, it just makes it so much more interesting, and I get a real sense of accomplishment in making these different things, especially when I know how good they are for my family. So for me, I think it's really important to be balanced in the way we think about things. I've learned to really enjoy spending time in the kitchen, making the things that my family needs for their health. And I've also learned to not feel guilty when I don't have time to do everything. I don't want to make this a burden for myself. I want it to always be enjoyable, because otherwise it's just not sustainable. And today I'm back in the kitchen and I'm really happy to be back. One of the other things that I haven't had time to do recently is put my shopping away properly. So I've had open packets of grains and things that haven't been put into their containers. And I know I don't really need to do that. They can stay in the packets in the drawer, and they have done in the past. But I just find it's a lot easier to use when they're in these containers, and it keeps my drawers a lot cleaner too. So in all, it saves time to put the packets in the containers. So I'm catching up on that kind of thing as I go today as well. I'm putting things away as and when I come across them. Today in this multigrain bread, I'm using black sesame seeds, chia seeds, flax seeds and pumpkin seeds. And this made a delicious granary bread that I absolutely love. You really have to try this recipe. It is so delicious. So I'm on to making the granola, which is another family favourite here. I've measured out the oil first so that the honey doesn't stick to the spoon. That's a little bit of a hack for you. I'm going to melt the honey before I add it to the dry ingredients and the oil in that big bowl over there. Again, I've got a recipe for granola over on the website, and I will link it in the description box below. And I will also link up above in the cards a video to show you step by step how to make the granola. So this is a slightly different recipe. I'm using the almond pulp, as you can see there, instead of whole almonds. It turned out really nicely, actually. I will definitely be doing this again, and I might even experiment making a granola only with the almond pulp. I think that would be really good, and it would be something that my boys can eat too, so that would be even better. I'm adding in Brazil nuts, pecan nuts. There's oats in there that you didn't see me put in. I'm going to add some vanilla and some salt, and then the same seeds as I used in the bread, so flax seeds, black sesame, chia, and pumpkin seeds. I'm going to mix all of that together and spread it out on a baking tray and bake it in the oven at 160 degrees for about 30 minutes. While the granola is cooking in the oven, I'm going to make use of the oven being already on and not too hot to dry out this almond pulp. Now, I think almond pulp, you normally should dry it out at about 100 degrees Celsius, but I've used this since in a couple of different baking things and it's worked really well. I like to be able to use up the almond pulp that's left over after making the almond milk, and this is a really good way to do it. You can then use that dried out almond pulp as you would use almond flour. Now I'm going to be adding the seeds that I have roasted to my bread. So I've wet the work surface slightly. I've got wet hands and I'm just stretching out the bread onto the work surface. So this has just been mixed very loosely so that all of the water is absorbed into the flour, left for 30 minutes, then one stretch and fold. Another 30 minutes later, you're going to do these add-ins. So it's called laminating. You pull the dough out onto the work surface, sprinkle your add-ins. It can be raisins, it can be nuts, it can be seeds, it can be whatever you like. And then you fold over the bread to make it into a coil, and then put it back in the bowl. And then after that, you are just going to be doing coil folds. I do like to do this laminating process because I think it really strengthens the dough really well. And you'll be able to see with the coil folds later, I almost have trouble doing the coil folds because the dough is already so strong. I'm just covering up the dough with a wet tea towel every time so that it doesn't dry out. Now this is a project that I'm really glad to have done. As I said in last week's video, we buy half a pig maybe twice a year, and I do like to be able to use every part of the pig just so that we know that we're getting our money's worth, and also out of respect for the animal. So I'm making pate with this liver. It's been in the freezer for a few weeks now and I've been meaning to make it, but I just have not had the time, and I'm really glad to have been able to make it today. That's one thing off my list. I know it's so good for us and I really want to get liver into our diet daily if I can. So I really wanted to get this made, but I just did not have the time. And to be honest, it's not my favourite job either. I don't like handling raw liver. Thankfully, it was my husband that cut it all up before we put it in the freezer, so that was one thing less for me to do. But still, I don't enjoy making this, but I do enjoy eating it. It's a very good recipe, and I will link the recipe in the description box below. I had trouble finding a dairy-free liver pate recipe, so if you're interested in a dairy-free option, I really would recommend this one. It's absolutely delicious. The seasoning is just right, absolutely perfect. So you fry some onions, you add some garlic right at the end, remove those from the pan, put a little bit more grease into the pan, and then fry the liver so that it's just done. It shouldn't be overcooked. It needs to be browned on both sides, and then you put everything in the blender with some salt, some pork fat, some thyme, some rosemary, and some apple cider vinegar. You blend that up until you've got a nice thick paste, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it into my silicone muffin mold so that I can freeze small amounts and then just take out what I need when I need it. Now we're on to the coil folds with the bread, and you can see what I mean about how strong the dough is already. It might possibly be lacking a little bit of water. Maybe I could have increased the amount of water, but when I baked it, it turned out perfectly. It's just that it was quite difficult to do these coil folds. The almond pulp and the granola are done, so I'm going to be putting them into jars to have them to hand. They'll just sit on my work surface until we need them. To be honest, I don't think either is going to last very long. I'm adding some dried fruit to the granola before I put it in the jar. So a few dried dates and a few dried cranberries, and they will just bring a little bit of extra sweetness to the granola. I'm hoping these will just all get mixed up into the granola when I break up the granola to put it into the jar. So there you have it, some delicious granola that, to be honest, probably won't even last the week, but we'll enjoy it while it lasts. Now I'm on to the last stretch and folds for the bread, and you can see that the dough is really very strong now. So I'm just going to let it rest after this until, well, I don't let it double in size. I tend to find that I get better results if I don't let it bulk ferment for too long. So it probably only grows by about maybe 30-40%. I'm not really sure. It's not an exact science for me. I really just eyeball it. And it also depends on how much time I've got. So I let that rest pretty much the rest of the day, and I will shape it later on. And in the meantime, I'm just going to drain the stock. We'll be using this in several meals over the week, so I'm leaving some in the fridge and the rest of it I'm going to put it in the freezer to pull out when I need it. I'm shaping the dough and putting it in the fridge for the cold ferment, and then that's done until the next morning when I'm going to bake it. I love making sourdough. I love the fact that it makes me slow down and enjoy the process. I also love how good it is for you, and it's really something that I want to be doing more and more of. But like I said earlier on in the video, I'm really trying not to beat myself up when I don't get to do this kind of thing. We've bought bread from the bakers several times this week because I just didn't have the time, and that was fine. We actually enjoyed having a baguette or two. It was quite fun for a change. So I hope you've been encouraged today that even in difficult times, don't beat yourself up. If you need to take a step back, do it. Do what you know that you need to do. Prioritize what is most important, and sometimes that is not necessarily spending a whole load of time in the kitchen. I'm just going to leave you now with some images of this finished bread that I was really pleased with how it turned out. You never know when you've had a bit of a break from baking. It's always a bit of a concern. Have I forgotten everything? Will I get it right? But this one turned out really well. If you've enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and hit subscribe. I make videos every week on homemade food from scratch, allergy-friendly meal ideas, and lots of sourdough. See you next time. Bye!